So please help me in welcoming Marisa. Marisa?
Hi. Oh. How's everybody doing? You still awake? A little bit? Oh, it's bright. So I know that we talked at the beginning a little bit about accessibility, usability, and diversity and inclusivity. So this is kind of wrapping those things a little bit together as well. And what I'm going to talk about today is big data and small data, actually. So this is obviously what it's called, big data, and what it's missing, remembering our humanity. So a little bit of an intro, they already did it, but my name is Marisa, and I'm so excited to be here today. And I do UX, oh, we're broken. Just a minute.
Projector again.
All right, just 1 minute, guys. All right, so I think they might be restarting it. So while we're waiting, I know that we all know what usability is, but I'm just curious, how many of you actually do any type of research or usability research as you're coding and creating things, with a show of hands? Just curious. We've got a couple in the front row, maybe some in the back there that I can kind of see. So obviously, it's really difficult when you're creating things and coding to be able to do that research. And so that's what this talk is a little bit about today, is using that framework and being able to take that and take it back to your team and hopefully incorporate some of that usability and small data, which we'll talk about more, into your products, so that they are easier for people to access and so that you can learn more about the people that are using them. I have no jokes, I'm sorry. I could do another cheese joke. I mean, I do have one cheese joke. No, I feel bad. They've been cheesed out.
It looks like we actually have an issue with the projector, so probably it would be best to just take a coffee break. Maybe 15 minutes. Would that work for you guys? Yeah? Thank you so much. I'm sorry, Rita. No. So let's welcome back Marisa.
All right, try this again. I do want to say thank you, though, to the tech team for scrambling to get that back up. So thank you so much. I think they deserve a really big hand as well. All right, so I already introduced myself. You've heard my name a million times now. I'm Marisa. And I do UX research, design, and product management. So I know that she mentioned I worked for an agency called Clearhead. It's a digital optimization agency, so we work with companies to do user research and A/B testing. A couple of the companies are Adidas and Tesco. Just a couple names that you probably know. So Today I want to cover a few things. When you walk away, I want you to understand the difference between big data and small data. I want you to learn a little bit about discovering small data and then getting buy-in on the solutions that small data can provide. So, what is big data? I know that we have all heard that term being thrown around, especially the last several years. But basically, it's just a large volume of data. It can be structured and unstructured, and it hasn't undergone any analysis. So anytime you get a bunch of demographics in, numbers, anything, when it goes into the file and it's just a bunch of raw data, that's big data. And we get it from everything. It's taken from our cell phones, it's taken from our computers. If we're on Facebook, Twitter, all of that data is being gathered about us. So there are applications for it, and one of the applications is Tesco, actually. So they can conduct proactive refrigerator maintenance by analyzing the data points from their products. So they've got refrigerators that send them the data points about the refrigerator, and they can tell by the patterns in the data when a refrigerator is going to need some maintenance. So it's a really cool thing to be able to have all that information and make it applicable to our daily lives. In addition to that, American Express uses predictive analytics so that they can identify when accounts are going to churn or close by finding patterns in the customer data as well. So again, it pulls in all of this information about how we're using our accounts and how we're going online and using our account online and everything like that, our buying patterns. And it takes that information, and once they funnel it through, they can tell if a customer is going to churn or not. So that seems like it's got great broad usage, right? But there are limits. And what are the limits? The main thing is that we get the what, but not the why. So American Express, like I just mentioned, they have this data that they can compile, and it lets them know, okay, well, a person with this pattern normally churns or closes their account. But what they don't know is, why is that happening? Is the person getting divorced and so they're closing an account? Is something else happening in their lives, another major event, like they're starting a business or leaving a company? What's happening in their lives that's making them do that? So another example is this. This is an example of a large data set. So this is from Google Trends, and this is all of the search interest for football over time, European football, so don't worry. And it's from 2014. And what you can see here, this little box, that is the peak of the search between August and September of 2014. So great, right? We have all that data, but if you don't know what's going on, if you don't have any background, you don't know why that's happening. And obviously, when we're talking about something like sports, we know the trends of how it goes, so it's not surprising to us to see these peaks and then have it slope off. But if you're getting data sets for something else, you're not gonna know why these trends are happening, and that's where the small data comes in. Because small data is about people. Why do people make the decisions they do, and how do they interact with the world around them? So instead of just taking all of this information from people and throwing it in to our applications and using it to find these patterns, small data is about the person themselves. It's about that person behind their phone or behind their computer and why they're doing what they're doing. And the reason that it's so impactful is that it can help us design and create things that people can actually use and improve their lives. So, an example of that is this E4 wristband. And what it is, it looks, I don't know if you guys remember the Fitbit, so it looks very similar to a Fitbit, but this one is a little different because it monitors your physiological signals, but it's designed for people with epilepsy. So it's taking all of this small data about how people are living their daily lives. So what stresses do they have from Monday to Tuesday, or from the third week in February to the fourth week in March or something. And it gathers all that and lets them know, okay, well, when you have these set of factors, you are more likely to have a seizure. And so small data like this, where it's compiling individual data, can help save people's lives. So how does big data and small data work together? Obviously, if we're taking this really individualized and personalized information and combining it with larger trends that we see, we were able to do a lot with it. So, a little bit of a story. How does this improve people's lives? So back to Tesco. They have on their site a grocery application where you can shop online and get groceries delivered get groceries delivered to your house. And so we knew that a lot of people were using this application. We have the data set that tells us this, so we can see what people are buying, when they're buying it, all that information. But the small data showed us something very different. And what I mean by that is when we actually took the time to ask people, it gave us an entirely new demographic that we didn't really think about in the first place, and we didn't realize, maybe realize was there. And so these are just a couple of quotes, which was for people that are living with a disability or are caring for, in this case, an elderly parent with a disability, it allowed them to get their weekly groceries without having to go to the store, because a lot of times they weren't able to get to the store. So it was impacting their people's lives in a way that we hadn't thought of. And what this means is that as we go forward and as we use these larger data sets in conjunction with these smaller data sets, it opens up an entire world of personalization where you could show somebody an app that was more personalized to them and help them for their specific thing. So it allows us to make changes and pivot the way we need to really help the people that are using our product. So that seems great, but how can you use small data? It's everywhere, right? Each of us has different needs and different requirements. And as we use different apps and things, we all use them differently. So the first thing is to start asking questions. I know that when we're creating products or sites, we make a lot of assumptions about how the product or site is going to work based on how we use it, and based on kind of the normative behaviors that we see. But we have to realize that about 40% of the global population is online. That's a lot of people that you've never met. You know, it's about 3.5 billion people. We've never met them. We don't know how they live their lives from day to day or week to week. And so that's a lot of different use cases that we have to account for. Now, not all of those people are probably using your site or application, but some of them are. And so that is why you need to ask. So why don't we? Well, we have deadlines. They are an unfortunate part of every single business, and everything is due yesterday. So it makes it seem extremely difficult to be able to, get all of this information from people and take that time to use it while also creating. In addition to that, sometimes it's difficult to get team buy-in. If you've got to convince somebody that this is worth their time to do, that can be difficult, especially when you have other factors that you've got to consider. And lastly, no resources. It may be that you don't have the people, you don't have enough people on your team that somebody can take the time to do this, or you don't want to spend, part of your budget having to go out and produce surveys or do in-person interviews. But the truth is that asking these questions will actually save you money. And in addition to money, it saves you time, which I feel is even more valuable. So, how do we overcome this? First thing, deadlines. Questions can be asked in parallel with the work you're doing. So when you're talking to people and getting feedback, you don't need to stop all of the work you're doing to then go and talk to people and get information about and learn about your site. You can continue with your current work and constantly iterate on what you're doing and ask as you go. Secondly, if you keep the amount of questions short, it saves you time, and you can focus in on the things that you think are the most important and the things you most want to learn. Secondly, for no team buy-in, I know that I personally have had to deal with this too. So you have an idea and you say, okay, well, we've got this site that we just redesigned, and it would be really great if we understood how people use it. And you're trying to finish everything up, and the client maybe says, well, I don't know that I want to do that. We have other things that we need to do. The first thing is explain how it'll make their lives easier. So like I said, saving time and saving money, things we all want more of. As you ask these questions and learn more about your own site or product, it allows you to create more consciously, and in doing that, you will save yourself a lot of extra effort. And then secondly, if you can make it an experience for people so they can actually see how people use the product, it usually gets people very excited. So we've done videos that don't have any they're not actual interviews, it's just people going through the site as they normally would. And you can see where people are struggling, or where people are having a good experience, or using the site in a way that you wouldn't necessarily think they would. So when you show that to people, it usually gets them very excited and makes them understand that, oh, these are problems we should think about, or we're doing this thing really well. How can we apply that across other sites or other products? And lastly, no resources. So it's very difficult if we're running on a small team or a small budget, but you can get around that by asking people that you personally know, especially if they're in your target demographic. Makes it very easy. You just ask them to get on the site and try to figure it out, and you watch them. It takes zero money and not that much time. And lastly, you can reach out on forums for help. I personally have been asked by people to go in and help with some usability, like usability testing, and making sure that the site works the way it's supposed to. And it's one of those things that is exciting for people, especially if they are interested in usability and in the user experience. So things like Reddit, LinkedIn, or even Hotjar gives you a 15-day trial where you can go and throw up the video, or put up the interaction that you want to test, and it's free, and you can get people's feedback. And so this is the put up user videos. So the videos are easy, quick, and don't require you to create any questions at all. So how do we start doing this? The first thing is to do some initial discovery on your own to assess the problems that you might have. So I mentioned a minute ago that we make a lot of assumptions when we create sites or when we create products. And we all know that there are other ways that people interact with sites, but it's really hard for us to see that when we're so close to it. So this is a really good way for you to kind of get outside of the way you normally think and look at it with a new perspective. So when you're trying to figure out things that you could do to make your site better, start by going through the entire process by yourself and see how you do. Are you coming up with issues that you maybe didn't notice that you had before? Do some things work much more smoothly than you expected them to? Take the time to assess problems on your own, because it'll help you see it from another person's perspective. And then think through the interactions on the site. Think about where you've placed everything, which I know we do, but we don't always think about it from a standpoint of making sure that everyone can see the interactions the way they need to, or if you're coding a site that's specifically for maybe an older generation, making sure that it's accessible for the older generation. So by having larger text, or making the interactions a little bit easier to see. So then you need to, after you've started to do that, our next step is to ask better questions. And that makes you think, what do you want to learn? So as you're going through this, there should be an overarching goal that you're trying to achieve, right? You want to learn maybe what problems do you have on the site that you didn't think of? Or maybe you want to learn Is there an interaction that's not working that we need to fix? Or if you need to drive more traffic, maybe you can understand, you want to learn why you're not getting as much traffic as you thought that you should be. And so identifying what it is you want to learn is a huge part of knowing what questions to ask. Secondly, falsify, don't validate. So this is a huge thing when you're doing user research, is that a lot of times we go in trying to validate an assumption that we have. So for instance, I think that a certain function on my site works really well, and I want to go in and make that true. I want to see people say that this works really well. But when you do that, you automatically look for validation instead of saying, okay, well, I didn't notice that this didn't work very well, and so I can fix that. So falsify and don't validate. And next, only ask 2 or 3 targeted questions. So you may want to ask people a lot of, have them do different tasks or watch them go through the site, but you should only ask 2 or 3 very targeted questions that you want to answer. It's best to dive in deep and decide what you want to get out of it, and then what questions support that overall goal. So what is a good question? A good question allows for the freedom to try and fail. It's really hard when we've put a lot of our heart into either designing or creating a site or a product, and then people struggle with it. It's very hard to watch them do that because, 1, you know how it works, and 2, you've tried so hard, it makes you feel kind of bad to watch people go in and struggle. But allowing people the freedom to try and fail helps you grow and helps you learn and think in a way that you may not have. And next, a good question allows for a set scenario, but not directing the user. So you don't want to tell them what to do. You want to tell them the end goal, but not how to do it. So, for example, please find the cheapest boots on the site. This is a very simple, generic research question that has a main goal in mind, so it's very specific, and it's task-driven. So they have an end goal that they're trying to get to, but the most important thing is they can do it any way they want. They can search, they can go through the navigation, they can do whatever they need to, however they feel comfortable looking for that information. And allowing for that freedom actually will help you find more things than you may have otherwise found if you gave them, if you directed how they were supposed to move through the site. We've seen that a lot where we will do this research, and we will give a task like this where we ask them to complete a goal. And as we're watching them complete this goal, we notice on 3 or 4 other pages that there are interactions that don't work the way they're intended to, or that there is some struggle that we may not have otherwise realized. So it allows this a whole lot of more information to come up so that you have more that you can discover and learn about improvements for your site. So what's a bad question? A bad question leads the user. It tries to validate something that you think works, like I mentioned before. So it tries to validate something that you think works, so you're not letting people discover the way that they normally would if they were doing this on their own. So, same question, but a little bit different. Please use the filter to find the cheapest boots on the site. So the problem with this is that you're trying to validate a specific function, the filter, and maybe they don't use the filter when they're trying to search, or maybe they search using the actual search bar instead. So you're taking away their ability to learn something, and you're actually taking away your ability to learn something, and you're directing them too closely because there's no freedom to explore. And then lastly, it makes them change their normal behavior. If they were on the site and doing this themselves, they may go about it a completely different way, and you're asking them to do something that is not realistic for them. So, analyzing your data. There are, especially when you do research when it's on something like usertesting.com, where you can hear the person and you can watch them go through the site. There is a lot of reading between the lines and trying to understand the context and understanding what the user doesn't say. So I hear this a lot when we're doing research, which is something about the color of the buttons or the color of the background. People don't like it, or they say, you know, I don't like the button color on this site. I think that it should be changed. And so the immediate thought is, oh, well, you know, they're trying to design for me now too, awesome. And what it really is about, when you think about your demographic or you think about the struggles that you're seeing, a lot of times it can be more about contrast. They're saying that they don't like the button color, but what they actually mean is that they can't see the text on the button color. And those are two very different things. They're two completely different problems. And if you solve for the first problem, which is just changing the color, you're not solving the root problem, which is they can't see the button, and so they can't complete the goal that they're trying to achieve. Another is finding patterns in use. So as you watch people go through the site, you will find that a lot of people navigate through the site at the beginning the same way, and then they kind of change as they go through the task. And finding those patterns and understanding where something is working can help you apply that across different sites and different products as you go forward. So, and you'll notice that as you do more and more of this, more patterns start to emerge. And so that's really good for you to know as you're creating that this type of, say, form works better than this type of form. And you know that because you watched people go through it. And in addition to that, you need to find patterns in friction or struggle. So is there a place where people are always messing up? You know, I see this a lot with checkout flows for sites. There's usually, in the same spot, people fail and they can't get through. And all of the people that we're asking to test that site will fail in the exact same spot. And it may be a place that we wouldn't have even thought of, and it doesn't seem to us like something that would be a problem because we see it all the time. So finding those patterns in the struggle and making sure that you're addressing them is really important. And what you're doing is identifying gaps. You're identifying gaps in the usability of your site, sometimes in the marketing and sometimes in the messaging. So as you get this information and you're kind of having this conversation with people, you'll be able to understand, what are we completely missing? What are we not seeing that we should be paying attention to? And when you do that, you need to share that data, right? And the way to do that is to put that together in a comprehensive summary. It's great to have the data, but not if you're keeping it in the dark, and not if you are, you know, telling one or two people but not presenting it. You need to present it to your team and make sure that this helps people understand that this type of research and usability is really important. And not only that, it's qualitative, but it's helpful. You know, it may not be the type of data set that we're used to where we get hard metrics, but being able to understand what people are thinking and acting upon it helps us create better things. So in addition to that, as you're putting that together, it's all about creating a story, right? And showing that journey for the user and making people understand that they're an actual person on the other end of that computer, and making that story come alive and make it real for people. And then lastly, summaries make the information actionable. So when I've done research in the past where we've done a lot of surveys and you have to go through and code the surveys and, you know, go through and theme them basically, it's a lot of information. If you've got thousands of responses and you have to go through and code it and theme it, it takes a long time, and it's an incredible amount of information. But it's all great because you can see specific responses to specific problems. But without a summary, it wouldn't be actionable. Nobody's going to know what to do with a file, you know, that has thousands of responses and no summary of what to do with it. And since you only had 2 or 3 questions that you posed, these summaries allow you to answer those 2 or 3 questions and really come away with concrete things that you can do to make improvements. So next, suggest solutions. So you want to suggest next steps that you can do that will solve the problems that you found. So if you've had issues with, say, a checkout flow, and everybody was missing the promo code, for instance, and not understanding where to put a promo code in on the site to get a discount or a coupon, your next step or your solution could be to change the treatment of that promo code box, or it could be to change where it falls in the checkout process. These are all changes that are going to make the site better, and the best part is you can back that up because you now have information that shows you why there were drop-offs at that specific point of the site. And in addition, you can use clips and quotes to make everything easier to understand and help you make your case. The clips and quotes really help you create the story and allow you to show what the individual is going through and present that to the people that can help make those decisions on how to change things. So, applying what you've discovered. You've got all this information, you've done it for free, or maybe you've spent a little bit of money to do it, and you've got all this information, but now what are you going to do, right? People aren't going to implement something just because it sounds good, unfortunately, or just because it's right. That's just not the way business works. So, explaining return on investment. I think this gets missed a lot when we're talking about systems or systems that we want to implement. We want to do the right thing, but we also want to do the right thing, especially if we know that it's going to help us or our business. So, how can you explain the return on investment? 1, a fleshed out design that doesn't work costs you thousands of dollars. So if someone says, well, I don't think we should do testing because it costs too much money, it takes too much time, it's all these things, a design that you've spent months working on that you've never tested, especially not in a prototype, costs you thousands of dollars if you produce it and put it live and then it tanks. If that happens, you've wasted so much money. And a product that doesn't understand its market fails. We know this. We've seen this many, many, many times. So this user research, as you are iterating on your site or on your product, this helps you understand your market better. It helps you, especially in a day and age where we're going more towards personalization, it helps you target those markets even better and think through ways that you can personalize to those specific people. And it can present new demographics and new opportunities that you may not have seen originally. So, to do this, you can do prototype testing to create winning designs. So, doing this gives you, these are quick, easy tests that tell you if you are going in the right direction. Plus, they allow you to design more quickly and with confidence. So you can do user research on your prototypes and make them clickable, and test them as you go, and your interactions will get better. You'll be able to apply those to future work, and they make you feel more confident that you are doing the right thing. The other thing you can do is integrate that user research with A/B testing. So we do this a lot, where you can use that small data to inform what you should test. And this is a huge thing. So instead of just making a change to a site that you may think is right? You've identified some problems that you think you could fix, so you go A/B test it. This gives you a bulleted list of things that you know people either don't like or don't understand or can't figure out. And when you do that and you A/B test it, your chances of making that second version work well go through the roof because you've already identified that it's a real problem that people are having. And so what that also allows you to do is optimize your site by testing what you think should work. And so that gives you the ability to make small little changes and push these tests and wait for that information to come back in. And then you've got, another line of research-supported ideas that you can use for the other test. And over time, your site gets better and better and better, and you're getting rid of a lot of the struggle that people are having to go through your site. And what that means eventually is that you'll end up, hopefully, with, if you're selling something, increased order conversions or a reduction in bounce rates. So people are staying online on your site longer. They're maybe searching more through the site and they're more committed and engaged. So that's what I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marisa. Do we have any questions for Marisa? We have a question there.
Hi. Are you going to show us how to do this in your workshop tomorrow?
Yes, I have a workshop tomorrow where I will show you how to do iterative prototype testing. So if you found this interesting and you would like to know how to apply it, in your own workplace or for your own sites for fun, that's what we'll be doing tomorrow.
Awesome. Fantastic presentation. Thank you, Marisa.